Hey friends, it's a couple minutes early, but I don't like waiting until the right minute, so figured I would just go ahead and come on air and say howdy. Hope everybody's doing okay. Oh man, it's been a long week. I see that we've got a few people with us already. We got Ada from Virginia. I hope it's pronounced Ada. We have an Ada, Oklahoma. And then Paul from the UK. Good to see you, friend. Eileen from Florida, of course. Good to see you, sister. And Paul. Hey, Paul. Already have a question. Very good. We've got 15. Okay, we've got 11 other people with us on YouTube. And I don't think I can see how many people are with us on Facebook. But go ahead and sign in. Let us know where you're from and if you have any questions or topics you want to cover today. Appreciate Ada's comment that she enjoyed I think Ada's a female name, right? Uh, Interview with Matt Reynolds. I'm glad you liked it. I was glad to be able to connect with him. He was a very affable person. With respect to Paul's question, I've been asked that a couple of times, and I can say with almost certainty that I'm not going. There was already one reason, which was because I'm a very present father and husband, and leaving my wife on her own for that long, just a couple months after having our fifth child, just didn't seem wise or considerate. The second reason, though, I met with my district fellow clergy, and President Pro Tempore came yesterday, Jordan McFall. If you haven't seen it, I've done an interview with him. He's a fantastic guy. But he said that the only people that are going to be nominated to go to the general conference are people who nominate themselves. And I'm not ever going to nominate myself for something. I don't like people who nominate themselves for things. I don't want the people in charge to be the ones who want to be in charge. And so I let him know how I felt about it, and I'm not going to get my way, but that's how it is. You don't get your way just because you got a problem with something. So Jordan and I are still friends, and he's my president pro tempore, and I'm happy to submit to him. But I don't agree that that's the way to go about things. So I would love to. TJ and I were filming the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline series earlier today, and I finally said, "Man, we just need to start a list of all the changes we want to make to this thing." And then we started the list. We've got 2 things on it so far, but one of them, I want a regulation that there are no secret meetings, that every meeting has to be open to anyone who wants to attend, and that all meeting minutes should be publicly available, except for personnel stuff. And then I want something that the culture just is that we do not put anyone in positions of authority who puts themselves in that position. I think only people who are lifted up by others should be lifted up. So y'all can argue with me if you want, if that's interesting to you. We can talk about it. But coming out of the United Methodist Church, one of the things I got really clear about was I don't like self-promoters. Whenever you have that allowed, you get bishops like the UMC had, and I would rather not. Ada said Daniel Hickson' most recent YouTube video was interesting. Why, as a Methodist elder, he's being ordained in the Anglican Church. I saw that he did that. I was perusing Christopher Ritter's People Need Jesus website, and I saw that Daniel did that, and I'm sure you're bringing that up partly because you know that he and I had a filmed conversation, and I've enjoyed Daniel, and I like him. I'm not at all surprised that he's made that decision. He's obviously been drawn to high church, high liturgy stuff for a while. That's a significant contingent of those who have left the United Methodist Church, some of which are in the GMC, some of them are not, but it's really amazing to see. I was reading there was a guy, I'm forgetting his name right now, but I follow him on Substack, and for a while he was following me on Plainspoken. And we didn't have a falling out or anything, but I just haven't heard from him. And I saw an article recently from him showing that he's going Roman Catholic, which is just so strange to me. But the only way to make sense of it is this feeling of tapping into the root And it sure is nice if you can believe that Christ's universal church corresponds with a worldly institution. And so, similarly, there are a lot of Methodists who just want, well, and partly I'm like this. I don't like the ephemeral. I don't like the stuff that's married to the spirit of the age. And in the Anglican Church, you have stuff that's married to a previous age that feels foreign and holy, and I understand why folks are drawn to that. And I wish Daniel well, and I hope to watch his YouTube video soon. If you had thoughts on that, write them down. I'm interested to know your thoughts on his video. Hey Nathan. Hey Duncan. Yeah, thanks for remarking on that. I'll pull that up. I did a video with my daughter Susanna on the catechism questions. So here's my YouTube channel. This is my main place where people watch me. I never would have thought that YouTube would be a place where I would be, but that's the place where I've done best since we got together last week. I've published, I think I'd already published this, and then I published Considering Charlotte, which we covered the proposals at the United Methodist Church's General Conference dealing with human sexuality, and that went okay. I saw one person commented on it and said, "I sure felt sorry for Lonnie on this one," but Lonnie's a great sport. We'll look at a post from him here in a minute. Did another episode on the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline. Then there's the Matt Reynolds interview right here, and then this is what we were just talking about with respect to. No, that's not where I wanted to be. With respect to Duncan's comment, my daughter Susie sits across the table from me here on Tuesdays, and we're going to go through one catechism question per week. And we got off to a good start. She's a very intelligent young lady. She's much more fun to look at and listen to than me. So I'm mostly just preaching at her, and then she's responding to me, and that's the format. She's learning to make these slides on Canva to cover all of the scripture readings that we're doing, and so there's a lot of scripture, and then she's been well established in the faith, so she's fun to listen to. The whole point of that series, if you haven't watched my intro to that series, is I'm not trying to teach your children or other people's children. I'm trying to help adults teach their children, and there are so many that have just never identified as a religious instructor. They have no idea what that would look like, and they have this imagination that you have to have curricula and you have to have some kind of like program. And no, just do one question at a time, sit down, quiz them, joke around with them. So many adults really don't know how to just sit and visit with their kids, and it's such a great thing. I was hoping Jesse would be a part of it, my boy. So Susie is 7, Susanna, of course, named after Susanna Wesley, and Jesse is 5, and he's right there on the cusp of being able to enjoy something like this, but he's just not quite there. And of course, I forgot to go back to my camera here, so that's fun. Anyway, you should check out that series. It's not, I mean, kids will probably enjoy it, but it's more for adults. It's for helping adults figure out how they want to talk about faith. I mean, the catechism isn't geared towards kids, even though kids are typically the recipients of catechism. And I've reached out to the primary author of the catechism. Of course, I can't remember his name right now. I always get him and Scott Kisker confused, but it ain't Kisker. Anyway, he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but hopefully I'll be able to correspond with him and get his thoughts on some of these. Some of them are really kind of enigmatic to me, why they picked some certain verses over others. So anyway, we'll see if I can't ever get a hold of him. Nathan, you found me through Daniel. That's cool. I like Daniel. So, or wait, are you talking about my brother Daniel? Because we were just talking about Daniel Hickson. Either way, both Daniels are cool. I'm not going to say which one I think is cooler, but you could probably guess. Paul says, sometimes volunteering yourself, if no one else will do it, you may have to do it. God moves in mysterious ways. Yeah, if no one wants to do something, I still say you've got to nominate somebody else. Yeah, I mean, if it's between, so both things are uncomfortable, right? hey, I think someone so should do it. Uh, like if nobody will do it, then you have to. There is nothing else to it. But if it's between, I think so and so should do it, and okay, I'll do it. I just say always nominate somebody else. And then if they say, I really, I don't want to. I don't think I'd be good at it. But you, on the other hand, I would really have you do it. Well, then the problem is solved right there. So I'm not saying that this is a one size all solution. And I totally acknowledge in the church, yeah, there are lots of situations where nobody wants to do something and somebody's just got to step up and do it. But if it just so happens to be a position of leadership where you get lots of authority and respect, oh, nobody wants to do it, but I guess I could. No. Hey Ed, how we doing today, brother? Good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Paul says British Anglicans can vary from bells and smells to happy clappy. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting all the parallels between the Brits and the Americans, and then all the ways that we're completely different. Lately, I've been listening to, I don't know if you know him, Paul Konstantin Kisin. He's a comic, but also a social commentator. He was a Russian immigrant to the UK. I just think he's so smart and so affable. But he's been talking about the ways in which American wokeism has infiltrated British culture, and he's of the mind that actual look him up, Constantin. I think he spells Constantin. He spells it with a C, and then Kisin is Kisin. He's a fantastic thinker. Duncan says we need help in how to lead our households as a church. So, Duncan, yes, we do. And what that comes to is reclaiming household codes found in the Bible. So, I'm about to preach on a household code in Colossians chapter 3. It says, men should act this way in the household, wives should act this way in the household, children should act this way. Those are really helpful. But so here's the rub for Methodists. For Methodists, at least in America, for a long time, we've treated men and women as interchangeable and saying there is no father role, there is no mother role, there's just parent role. And, children need to be taken care of and respected. And it's not that there's no truth in that, but we've kind of gotten rid of the notion that fathers, you have a role and you should play it. Everything hinges on you. And mothers, you have a role, and children, you should obey your parents and respect them and love them. I think we have to reclaim all that stuff. But that can easily, that's a dangerous territory to go into. But if we don't reclaim that stuff, then we continue to sit in the ruin and waste of families that have been disintegrated, right? And we see what that's causing. It's terrible. So there were a lot of people who imagined we can leave behind the arbitrary strictures of the past and yet not go nuts. And I think what history is showing, the present history is showing, is no, you either hold to traditions of the past or you go nuts. It's not that you can never change anything, but it's that if you don't have a predisposition to acknowledge wisdom in the past, and you're very reluctant to do new stuff. I think if you're too happy to do new stuff and embrace new ideas, then you're going to see ruin, and that's what we're seeing in the family. That's what we've seen in Methodism. In Methodism, well, we 100% got on board with this kind of modernist deference to experts, right? So parents stopped teaching religion in the household because we got the expert at the pulpit at the church. So what does Pastor Jeffrey say? I don't have anything to teach you. And so it's really weird to get to this point where we're going, a lot of these experts don't know as much as we thought they did, and they're kind of crazy, and they make us do crazy things. I used to think populists were crazy people, and now I think they're the most sane people in the world. And there needs to be a populist reclaiming of the Christian faith, and that can go crazy, but at least it's not top-down crazy, right? It's bottom-up crazy, and I always prefer that. So anyway, yeah, Duncan, I think catechism can be a reclaiming of that parent sitting down with child, instructor, student. Man, it's so sad. A lot of children don't even know how to learn from their parents, right? They talk back. They see their parents as a means to an end. They take them for granted. And there needs to be, you can tell Susie's trying with me, right? She says, "Yes, sir." She doesn't always say that, but she's sitting down, she's taking student posture. She's intentionally trying to submit to me. And that's really, I hope it's wonderful for you and your kids to see that that's not something of a bygone era, but that's something that we can have today and we don't have to be ashamed about. I'm talking too long about stuff. There are more comments. Methodist Bill, how you doing? From Amarillo, good to see you. West Texas. Hey, Jeff, how you doing today, brother? I need to find a way. I need to work on my live stream skills. I eventually want to start bringing people on screen and visiting for little periods of time. I think that'd be fun. Jeff, I never get tired of talking to Jeff. Hey, Tim from, where's Bruce at? Ben from Dallas. Got some Texans with us today. Man, I've been thinking a lot about y'all this week. Texas has been in the middle of some things. Dean from Tucson. Isn't considering Charlotte interesting? It's been hectic. You know, Simon Mafunda has a terrible internet service. Odell Horn's computer can't work, so I'm doing all this editing, but I'm so glad for it. I wish I had known how to do this 8 years ago. You know, I wonder if anything would have been different in the UMC if I'd been able to do this earlier, because there's just so much that was happening behind closed doors. And it's just been really nice to talk about these things out in the open and talk to different experts who know different things and elevate them rather than the party line. So if y'all haven't checked out that series, even if you've left the UMC, there's just something really nice about stepping outside of it and then looking in a little bit more dispassionately and not being so angry at just the overt. We just recorded a session this morning. Me and Lonnie and Simon, Joe, and we've got Amy Valdez Parker, who's a part of it. She was the head of the connectional table 8 years ago whenever they were trying to pass all this stuff that I thought was terrible. And it really rocked my world that they just didn't seem to have any clue what was going on in other countries or on the grassroots level. And so Amy is representing the institutional perspective today, and she's talking about how it is that people need to trust the leadership of the United Methodist Church. And I probably should have just been quiet and said, or something. But I said, "What? We've been talking about the new social principles that have been presented. They're wanting to throw out all of them and completely replace them. And the new one does away with the definition of marriage, just says it's two people who love each other, something like that. But it's no longer a man and a woman." And this was in spite of what 2019 General Conference said. This is in spite of what international delegates said and counseled. The guy who chaired the committee that drafted it is a gay activist. He was the head of the Reconciling Ministries Network for a time. All of this signals, the fact that they're not listening, the fact that they put in charge who is in charge. All these things all signal that they don't respect or trust the people of the United Methodist Church, and they're just going to do things their own way, right? And so it's crazy to me that Amy is saying they need to trust us, and then we're looking at all these reasons as to why I think they shouldn't be trusted. And I would have wanted to pull my hair out about that 6 months ago when I was still a part of the UMC, and now I'm able to kind of sit outside of it and go, that doesn't make much sense to me, and then I can move on, and I'm not upset about it. But it is still somewhat upsetting to me that we're all looking at the same picture and we're seeing very different things. So anyway, I would urge you to watch the episode here in a couple of days. We highlight some very interesting portions of the new social principles, and even for those of us who've left, I think it's good to look back. And I know, what was his name? Latham. He wrote an article saying how unhealthy it is to look back and we just need to look forward. But the thing is, if you don't identify what was wrong with where you came from, you're going to do the same exact thing where you're going. I've ministered to a lot of these guys here in the jail here, and a lot of them have the illusion that if they just leave this town and go to another town, all their problems will go away. Well, if you haven't learned how to do right, if you haven't learned what's wrong with what you're doing, you're going to fall in line with the exact same people. They'll have different names and faces, but it'll be the exact same way of life, exact same sins and problems. you have to figure out what's wrong with where you are or were before you make a new home. Otherwise, you're just gonna, how many people grow up with an abusive father, and then they date nothing but abusive men growing up. They're just slaves to where they've been without even being slaves to without even knowing it. They're just reproducing it. And I really don't want the GMC to be that. I want it to actually be a fresh start. And that's what everybody's saying right now. But I'm not sure we can do that if we're not looking back and going, okay, yeah, I remember that. We shouldn't do that. So anyway, that's what I hope Considering Charlotte is for everyone who watches it. I'm going back up to my comments now. Well, and I didn't see this one from Paul. I think I skipped over it. One needs a father and a mother role in life. I was about 40 when I realized that I'd missed out on having a father in my life. He died just after my 5th birthday. That's really sad, Paul. I'm sorry. Yeah, the more psychological research we do cross-culturally, the more we realize the importance of fathers in particular. And it's not that mothers aren't important. They're absolutely essential. But we've looked at men as disposable in the West for a long time, or optional, and I think the intent behind that has been good. There are a lot of single parent households that we just don't want to feel like they're lacking. And so we just don't talk about it, or we act like it's offensive to talk about it like they're lacking, but they are lacking. And it might not even be their fault. Maybe they did nothing wrong, but that doesn't mean that we have to pretend that they're playing with a full deck of cards. They're not. And, Sarah Beth and I, my wife and I, we share the load pretty evenly. And we'll look at each other at least once a month and go, how do single parents do this? You can't do this. And it's not just about 2 pairs of hands. It's also, there's a distinct role for the male. Men and women are different. And the more we watch men being absent in the household, the more negative consequences we become familiar with. Something a lot of you may or may not know, the faith life of a father impacts children far more than the faith life of a mother. So children of single mothers that are believers stick to the faith less than children of single fathers who are believers, and especially people raised by both parents whose fathers are believers. If they watch their father follow Christ, then that is one of the biggest determining factors of whether or not they are going to follow Christ later on in life. Fathers are really, really important. So God bless you, fathers. Ben says, Considering Charlotte is fascinating. Thank you. Tim says, Jeff Pospisil helped me find a good tax preparer. Thank you. I'm in a different group, but watch you Methodists closely as I have many Methodist family members. God bless you. Keep us in your prayers. I'm glad that Jeff Pospisil is a very helpful person. He will empower you because he doesn't want to hold everybody's hand. So it's in his selfish interest to help you grow up and do the things you need to do. I'm sure you're a grown-up, but I'm just saying people generally are used to hand-holding. He'll say, here's how to do it. Come join me in ministry. And then we all do it, and it's great. Methodist Bill, maybe you should do a series with everyday pastors about how we're working to reconstruct Methodism within our congregations. I think that's a fantastic idea. It's something that I've wanted to do in my own annual conference, the Heartland, and I haven't put this idea down. I imagine it being a weekly live stream that all of the clergy in the Heartland deal with. I think we should have that in every annual conference so that we have a sense of connectionalism. For right now, though, I'm sure you can tell, I'm just trying to get to know the thought leaders. And that's one of the things that we can talk about today. Here, I'll show you some of the articles that I brought up that we can talk through. Let's see. There was this one by Matt O'Reilly, and of course I interviewed him a month ago. He's hosting the Reconstructing Methodism Conference in April, and he wrote this article on not overcorrecting, bishops, baptism, and seminaries in the GMC. I haven't read that yet, so I thought we could read it over. I also really like Riley B. Case. Everything he writes is great. It's historically informed and theologically acute. So I thought we could read that because I like hymnals, learning from Methodist hymnals, elitists, and common people. And then I had a series. Oh, there was one person I wanted to promote this week. It ain't a person. It's TMS Global. And of course, I interviewed Jim Ramsey a couple weeks ago, who's about to be their #1 CEO over there. But there's a program that they host called Who is My Neighbor? And it's aimed at equipping local church, normal laity. They're a mission agency, but they've realized there's a lot of people who don't know their neighbors in America, in our culture. We are living in a post-Christian culture that we effectively need to re-evangelize the culture, and that can only be done if we learn how to get to know our neighbors again. That's something that I did a couple of years ago. Hardly anybody knows their neighbors anymore, and how on earth are you going to minister to people if you don't even know the people around you, you know? So a lot of people have forgotten how to be social, how to get to know their neighbors. And so I just wanted to recommend this website to you guys. Let's see, this was at neighbor.study. Really? Anyway, if you can't find it on your own, go to TMS Global, and you should be able to find it there. Type in "Who is my neighbor?" TMS Global, and check it out for your church. I'm not usually a big curriculum person. You know, even with this, half of me is just like, who needs a curriculum? Just go to your neighbor's house and knock on their door and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm your neighbor. Let's be like normal people and know each other. But if you need a curriculum, consider that. I had some social media posts that I thought would be fun to look at. There was a little bit of Twitter drama yesterday, and I thought it'd be helpful to talk through that, but I'm going to check the comments one more time before. I'll probably do that, and then I'll come back to one of the articles that, if any of you wanted to do it. Oh, I haven't seen any more comments, but we're still live, so we're in good shape. All right, let's look at what happened yesterday. Well, okay, I'm gonna look at the Lonnie Brooks quote first, because so Lonnie is one of the correspondents on the Considering Charlotte group. I'll make it a little bit bigger for you guys. Can I do that? There we go. That's about the right size. All right, so he posted this 2 days ago. During the height of the dominance in mainline Christian theology of the social gospel movement, the theme of that movement became the guiding theme of mainline churches. That theme can fairly be summed up as something like, the world sets the agenda for the church. I hate that sentiment, by the way. Well, to any Christian who considers the foundation of Christian teaching and therefore policy and polity to be Scripture, even as tempered in the Methodist Wesleyan tradition by the addition of tradition, experience, and reason to form the Wesleyan quadrilateral, that's exactly backward. You know, it really kills me how much I agree with Lonnie and how we just disagree in the end on the lens through which the Bible needs to be read, because it has huge implications for how close he and I can be in faith. And other people, I mean, he's a rare bird, though, you know, but I'm not the only one I know this bothers. I see other people in the comments just go, man, Lonnie is great, but I sure wish he saw the Scriptures the way we do. But he's showing more respect for it here than any other progressives or most centrists, you know. He says, sometimes as Christians, we're called to stand against and resist societal trends and norms, regardless of how popular they might be. One such trend in mainline churches today is the increasing popularity of the idea that in human sexual relationships, anything goes and ought to receive the approval, even the blessing of the church. So he's talking about how, I don't know if you've noticed this language of consent rising to the top, but there are a lot of cultural elites, culture despisers that are tired of troglodytes like me saying, hey, there's a lot of bad sex things you can do. They just think the only litmus test should be, is everybody consenting adults here? And then if that's the case, then nothing can be wrong. Doesn't matter how much violence is involved, doesn't matter how many people are involved. And so that's what Brooks is highlighting, is we're losing our moorings. He says, I believe that the current pressure from the left that would have the United Methodist Church turn its back on the affirmation of monogamous marriage as the standard by which human sexual relationships ought to be blessed by the church is misguided and is aimed in a direction that would be a detriment to our society. And I completely reject the accompanying idea that nothing in human society should be considered to be normative. We have lots of room to argue about what actually is normal, but that there is a norm is simply part of the reality of how society works. As W.B. Yeats, I think it's pronounced Yeats, said in The Second Coming, without a norm, quote, things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Isn't that a great closing line? And it's hard to argue against that. The only pushback I read that I cared about, and maybe there was better pushback, but it's from David Livingston, who, of course, is a very vocal, centrist, left-leaning voice. He's been writing in favor of the regionalization plan, and I haven't read it yet, but he said, I'm not aware that this is an effort being made. So the inference being that Lonnie is responding to some kind of like straw man, that caricature that people like me would create of the left. But Lonnie substantiates, he says, here's a portion of petition 20730. That's what you can find in the ADCA of the upcoming General Conference. The section of the proposed new social principles from General Board of Church and Society, quote, oh, it's longer than I thought. We affirm sexuality as a sacred gift. Here, it gets to we further honor the diversity of choices and vocations in relation to sexuality, such as celibacy, marriage, and singleness. We support the rights of all people to exercise personal consent, so there's that consent language, in sexual relationships, to make decisions about, so if you weren't versed in this, you would think, oh yes, rape is bad, there must always be consent. That's not what this is about. What this is about is, as long as there's consenting adults, there shouldn't be any judgment, Well, I don't really need to get back into it. So I love that Lonnie could put in receipts, show receipts for where this comes from. And of course, when you scroll down to the bottom of that, you see that David Livingston had no response, because there is no response, because this is the direction society is going. I don't know how many of you have ever studied logic, but there are a number of logical fallacies that they teach you shouldn't do. And I agree with all of them except the slippery slope fallacy. The notion is that just because you take one step in a certain direction doesn't mean that you're going to keep going in that direction. And I just think what we've seen since the 1960s in modern leftism is, if you do not keep movement from going forward, it's just going to keep on going. There is no point where people are satisfied and they just say, okay, we've gone far enough. They're going to continue to be miserable. And rather than repenting and saying, oh, this sounded right, this felt right, but it wasn't right, we're going the wrong direction, rather than doing that, they're going, no, we need to go further. And anyone who has a problem with it, they're the enemy, and we need to silence them as we go further. And that's where we find ourselves right now in society, and it's very concerning. So Lonnie Brooks is one of these people who's trying to hold the center. He's saying, as many people I know and love would say, look, no polygamy, no children, no animals. There's a lot of out of bounds sexual stuff still. We just want for two consenting, under the eyes of God, mutually exclusive, married people, whether they're male, female, whatever, that should be okay. It fits the principles of love. Forget complementarianism. Forget male-female binary. That doesn't matter. All that matters is two consenting adults. And they can't hold, and that's what he's lifting up that Yeats quote about. He's saying, look, if we can't hold the line here, then everything's going to fall apart. And he's right. What I would lovingly submit to him and many is, if you've had this notion that you can stop right at gay marriage and go no further, that's being exposed as a fantasy, and I simultaneously feel sorry for people who believe that and thought that they were being loving and faithful. But then I'm also, just frustrated that this wasn't more obvious to them and to more people as we've gone down this way. The slippery slope is a real thing, and we're seeing it now in the era of family-friendly drag shows and gender-affirming care. And, if you watch the Transitional Book of Doctrines and Discipline episode that I'm going to put out tomorrow or Monday, TJ and I get on this bandwagon a bit. So anyway, Lonnie Brooks. I love Lonnie Brooks. I think he's a very smart guy. I'm so glad he made this post. And part of me wishes he was right, but I don't think there was any way they were ever gonna to hold the line on this. I will be. Yeah, it's the Methodist Church in Great Britain, right? That's already said that couples don't need to be married. I think that came out like a year ago. Or no, that what? Well, my memory is kind of going out on that, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm going to check the comments, and then I'll show you another development on Twitter. I think we're at Brenda's comment. Fathers are so important. I understood this years ago. My son carried around his dad's carpenter's tape measure until he returned from a 6-month military deployment, and my son was 5. Oh, that's so precious. Yeah. I'm not even like a super masculine, manly man, but my children respond completely differently to me than to my wife. Lately, it's been that my baby, I'm the only one can really put her down. And then she's a bad sleeper, so she wakes up, and I'm the only one can put her back down, which means that if I have to leave midday for anything, my wife is dealing with the screaming. She will scream for like an hour until I get home to put her back down. It's simultaneous, really sweet. And, we're very privileged that I can be as available as I am. But the main case there just being fathers and mothers are different. And it's so self-evident. Boys and girls are different. That's self-evident as well, All this ideology around, I'm wanting to say ambidextrous, but it ain't the gender, when you're not gendered, when you're, there's a word for that. All that ideology around it is just bogus. It's bunk. So anyway, Paul says, and then did what was right in their own eyes. Ugh, Lord, reveal your truth. Yeah. I mean, that's the era we're in. Nathan says, regarding the slippery slope, I believe that it is valid in regards to logical arguments, but humans are not logical. And consequently, logical rules are not absolute rules for our behavior. Okay. John says 2 consenting adults, but not 3 consenting adults. Why? Why? Yeah. The classical Christian answer for why one man and one woman and no more is because, according to Ephesians, the marriage of a man and woman reflects the love of Christ and his bride. Does Christ have a bunch of churches? No, he only has one true church. That's his bride. We are the female complement to Jesus, the male complement to us. And once you lose that complementarity with man and woman, it all falls apart. So I'm one of there are a bunch of Methodists who listen to me and go, "Whoa, he believes in my wife and I do have a complementarian marriage, and we're very happy with that." I'm not an egalitarian for that reason. I think fathers and mothers are different. I think husbands and wives are different. And I think it's a great blessing to reclaim the biblical family codes and doing family the way that God has designed. I'm not going to say there's perfect bliss, but I'm going to say, man, our household is happier than any egalitarian household I've ever heard of. So, yeah, 2 adults, male and female, together till death. Eileen says, non-binary. I wasn't looking for that word, but non-binary can fit. Yeah, dude, I saw a thing recently. I wish I could remember the word. But, we're living in all this gender-affirming care time right now, and you would think that of the surgical procedures being done, I'm sorry, if this stuff grosses you out, then mute me for about 20 seconds. But you would think that they would be switching from one set of genitals to the next, but a ton of the people getting genital surgery right now that are struggling with this mental illness, they're just getting like neutered. It's neither nor. They're just getting everything removed and just being made smooth. Is that not like the saddest thing you've ever heard? That there are just people so anxious about sexuality and gender that they just cut it all off, which, part of me wants to find something to affirm there, because Jesus himself says, that there are people who are made eunuchs, and then there are people who become eunuchs for the kingdom. So it's not that in order to be right with God, you have to be a sexual creature. Like Jesus, he was a male, but he wasn't like a sexually active male. So there's a way in which it's okay to like step back from gender, worldly norms around some things. But whenever it goes in this direction of just like fear and insanity and that just makes me so sad. We're living in this era where clearly something is wrong, but for so many people the answer is give them the surgery, give them what they want. They know what they need. Duncan says gender fluid. No, it begins with an A. You guys, yeah, it's gonna bother all of us till I get this word. What's the word that means? It is before this whole cultural moment. It's a word. I always make the argument. Self-mutilation. That is self-mutilation. Yeah, I'm gonna try and look it up here. What is the word that means neither male nor female? It's giving me non-binary. Don't. That's probably the search you guys already. Androgynous. Androgynous. That's the word I was looking for. Androgynous. Oh, that feels so good. Hermaphrodite. Yeah, hermaphrodite. I feel like that's a medical condition where you have both sex organs, isn't it? I don't know. But yeah, DJ. Yeah, we got it. Androgynous. All right. On to Twitter drama. Man, I'm on Twitter. I love Twitter. I don't know why everybody's so turned off to Twitter. I don't get angry anymore. It's just fun to me. I don't know. But there's this guy, Michael Adam Beck. Here, I'll make this bigger. And I'll show you Michael Adam. This is his Twitter. That's him right there with the sleeves. If you didn't know this, arms covered in tattoos or sleeves. I'm going to be writing a piece on my Substack soon on why tattoos are a mistake. I'm not saying people are going to hell with tattoos, but it's a mistake. People shouldn't do it, especially believers. It has spiritual meaning. Don't do it. Anyway, he seems like a nice guy, sort of. But he made this dig. Here, I'll make it a little bit bigger now. See if you can figure out who he's digging at. The so-called, quote, next Methodism will not be engineered by a primarily white male conservative group of terminally degreed theologians in an academic hall. The current and next Methodism is springing up where the first Methodism did, in the fields, among the people. So part of this I like. Y'all know me. I'm kind of anti-intellectual. I get kind of fed up with people in the ivory tower who are so divorced from grassroots normal people. I can get on that bandwagon, sort of. The sexism, the overt sexism, and the racism, these white males, that's a problem. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But he's promoting this futuring forward. His company is called Fresh Expressions. I guess he officially works with or for the United Methodist Church. I could have done more research on him before. Well, I don't think I could have actually, but I need to do more. It's going to be in Charlotte, and it's next week. They're meeting, and look at this cornucopia of different colors and sexes, and he's highlighting this caricature of global Methodists that the United Methodist leadership has been concocting for some time, that it's all just a bunch of white racists. White men want to be in charge. They're going to chase the women out of authority, and they're not going to let blacks and people of color be a part of it. So anyway, he's tapping into that, and then he goes on. It is young, diverse, yes, smaller, but more theologically aligned. Its center is a true, practical divinity, a faith working itself out in love. It sees holy love not as some legalistic rendering of the old purity codes that Jesus himself actively challenged and reframed. The grand depositum of Methodism is sanctification. As sanctification is a holiness that is located in the compassion of Jesus. The grand depositum, just so that we're clear, is the doctrine of Christian perfection, the notion that God's Holy Spirit can so pervade us from the inside out that there's no room left for sin. So sanctification is a similar concept. Sanctification leads to entire sanctification or perfection, but he doesn't say that. And I would push on that a little bit. It's a holiness that is located in the compassion of Jesus, a heart strangely warmed by God's love that moves outward toward others. This is a true religion of the heart, one that integrates head, heart, and hands. See, the thing that's really frustrating about this guy and what he's saying, and a lot of people like this, is they say a lot of things that are right, but the devil is in the details. And the part that they get wrong is so damning as to ruin the whole thing. I probably shouldn't use the word damning, but like it's fatally flawed. It ruins the rest of it. Jesus warns about the yeast of the Pharisees, right? And when you have false teaching mixed with true, it has a deleterious effect on everybody. So the in case it needs to be said, the fundamental misunderstanding he has is that by having all this variety of faces, different skin colors, that you're going to reflect the variety of the kingdom. So what he says it explicitly, is we all look very differently, but we are theologically aligned. That's another way of saying we all believe the same thing. So they've chased out all the people like me and most of you, and now what's left is people who all agree. And of course, they can all look differently, but on the inside, they're pretty much the same. So there's not a diversity of belief. There's only a diversity of skin color, which of course for post-racial people like me, colorblind people like me, means nothing. In fact, I find it offensive whenever you select people only by virtue of their inalienable characteristics and not their merit. So as I look at all these faces, yeah, that's a lot of faces, and we'll talk through some of them in a minute if you want to. But I'm not impressed because it doesn't say anything about the quality of their character or their insights or any of that. From what I can tell, he's just put these people in these positions because they have the right melanin level or ethnic background, or they signal somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. And that sounds really theologically flawed to me. That sounds really blah. That doesn't draw me. I don't see what would be so. What makes these people experts in their? I shouldn't use that word expert. Why are they some people we should listen to about what Methodism is, what Methodism should be? Final comment he made here was love in which orthodoxy is right belief, right? Orthopraxy is right living, the things you do externally, and orthopathy, that's the right pathos, the right feelings, converge. Come be a part of it with 630 plus others in Charlotte next week. So yeah, they're getting ready. Was that in Charlotte, really? Yeah, okay. So that's where General Conference is going to be as well. So this is just kind of pepping people up. He got Talbot Davis's goat, as if white conservative men can't, by God's sheer goodness, lead among the most diverse of congregations and former connection. And then Michael's not afraid to go back and forth, but he didn't really do much there. He did get some. I pretended to be. It wasn't really pretending. It was kind of a sarcastic nice, and I just wanted to watch the live stream. I said I'd love to review the insightful leadership of these post-white patriarchy folk. Remember, reply with a link to the live stream when you have one. I'm sure y'all will have a good time. And I didn't mean that in the way he thought. So he sent me the link, which I don't think I have that open anymore. Do I? Yeah, that's it. And so he has an option where you can pay $35 to be part of the live stream. And I just said, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. And he said I can shoot him. I might shoot him an email. If it turns out being really good and they have some really expert people that really know what they're talking about, I can eat my words. But it really does look like blatant tokenism at this point. So, this is, I'm interested. We'll see if I can't tap into that. He did a follow-up thread, which we may or may not come back to. Jeremy Smith. Yeah, let's go to Jeremy Smith. This will be a good little palate cleanser because he's talking about this, but it's Jeremy. It's a different guy. Behind the UMC meme, he says, recently a promoter for a GMC gathering referenced an event that folks may not be familiar with. Who are the, quote, primarily white male conservative group of terminally degreed theologians in a lecture hall? Fun. Let's dive in and find out. Of course, he's being sarcastic there. Okay, so that's the original post. And then Jeremy says the next Methodism event is the John Wesley Institute. So he's making, a lot of people read the post by Michael Beck, and they're like, it seems like he's talking trash on somebody. Who is it? Well, it turns out it's Ryan Danker, who of course put the Mere Methodism conference together, Next Methodism. I feel like he called it Mere Methodism. Anyway, they had this big gathering. You'll see a picture of it in a minute, where they came up with a doctrine on holiness, not doctrine, a document, a big document on holiness that I hope to review soon. And of course, I interviewed Ryan, decent guy, good interview. You should watch it if you haven't. But Jeremy Smith is going to rib him now too. It gathers professed scholars. Professed scholars. They say they're scholars, okay, from various traditions on a summit to solidify who Wesley is for the conservative wing of Wesleyanism. Not that there's a historical Wesley, but they're going to concoct one for them. Their demographics generally reflect the claims made above. Reverend Beck above is making the contrast that an upcoming UMC Fresh Expressions event has dramatically different demographics reflecting the diversity of our pews and more focus on local practitioners than ivory tower scholars. So I get in on the classism and populism of that, but the racism I don't. Here's a photo I made of the screenshots of the two gatherings and promos. The John Wesley Institute is on top and the Fresh Expressions is on the bottom. So if you bring that up, it's supposed to look like a bunch of whiteys up here and a multicultural cornucopia down here. It's not exactly like that. They did have people of color there, but there are plenty of white folks. You see plenty of women that were there. Danker did his best, I'm sure, but it's a small pond. Kevin Watson wrote up about the group. He said, it really is amazing you can get that many of us together because the institutions that trained us were trying to train us away from this, So anyway, Jeremy Smith goes on, the two screenshots made me think of a similar contrast between conservative and liberal interns at the U.S. Capitol a few years back. Here's a similar screenshot compilation. So you have all the Republicans, a bunch of white folk up here, and then you have the Democrats down there in much more color. I actually don't remember that. But yeah, Jeremy Smith is making clear there's like a clear caricature here that it's easy to fit this into. And of course, that's calculated, It's all optics, of course, but for a lot of people, the optics matters. Jeremy says, I don't know much about Fresh Expressions, but clearly the visual contrast makes me more interested in that gathering. The John Wesley Institute is a closed group of invite-only scholars anyway. Laugh out loud. And the next gathering is here. So the meme contrasts an accessible, diverse gathering closer to the people. Remember when Wesley chose to become more vile, Bueller, with a conservative gathering of mostly white male scholars seeking to write away Wesley from those people. Thanks for reading. So that last part is like a really low jab, the inference being that like these are the hoity-toity rich ones that don't want anything to do with the detritus on the bottom levels, those people that are darker and, less educated, but, they're soulful. There's definitely a caricature that he's saying they fit into. Thing is, there just aren't that many Wesley scholars. Like of the people that are invited to the Fresh Expressions, I've got their pictures a little bit bigger here. I think I can make them a little bit bigger. Yeah, look at that. How many of them are actually Wesleyan experts? I mean, the purpose of Danker's event was to take the people who know the most and see if there's a consensus around doctrine. That's a very different thing than what this is doing. This is just like throwing people together that are really different but have a shared vision of like extreme hospitality, extreme openness, and it's a completely different gathering. Now, Danker is hosting events that are open to the public. It's just this was a very different thing. So it's comparing apples and oranges, and I don't know how much Jeremy Smith knows that. I think that the Beck guy knows. I think he's just plugging his event at the expense of someone else, and that's to be expected, I guess. But as I went down the line of all these people, okay, so there's the main ones up top.